I think a lot of people understand and can relate to the statement of games being more fun back then. Of course, back then usually refers to the earlier years of a person's first introductions to video games or certain media. Things were better back then. But in terms of video games, there actually is a pretty interesting dichotomy there that happens in terms of nostalgia and actual changes in quality in games over the years. As someone who has recently become a father and I'm getting a lot of consoles and stuff together that I had when I was younger to introduce to my children, I'm going back and playing these games in my spare time. Just for clarification, just in case this video is seen, years from now. Call of Duty Black Ops 6 is the current Call of Duty. Halo Infinite is still the most recent Halo, and there hasn't been a new Skate game in quite a while. So these are the current peaks of these franchises, and I've been going back and playing my original Xbox, PlayStation 3, PS2, and comparing them to what we have nowadays. And I'll be honest, the difference is pretty drastic. And I think the biggest points of it can be broken down into kind of three major categories. Obviously, nostalgia plays a huge role in this. If I grew up on games like Halo 3, Lego Batman, Minecraft on the Xbox 360 edition, if I never played them when I was younger, I obviously wouldn't have very much attachment to them. So, of course, take it with a grain of salt, nostalgia goggles, all that disclaimer out of the way. But one of the biggest things that I noticed from products from 2007 to 2013 and now is these new games are not shipping finished. Back in the day, before online patching and updates became normal for day one and taking up half your console storage, games had to ship in a largely 95% finished state. So these games didn't have any time for massive patches afterward. The technology really hadn't been figured out yet the way it is now. So developers really had to crack down on this product being ready to ship and be played on this date by the publisher. So it is awesome in terms of like the actual like logistics behind the technology. It's impressive that we've got to the point now where if someone finds an issue in a game, a software patch can be put out in the week and it fixes the problem for everyone. Back in the day, that would have to be the recall of the disc, and massive chunks of revenue will be lost from the publisher and the devs for having to pay to pull the game off of shelves and reship and redistribute discs of the game. That's a big deal. But at the same time, this led to games launching largely in a finished state. There was no, we'll add more content post launch. Whenever the next season comes out, we'll add a new gun or add a new map. These games had most of their content done and ready to ship at release window. I mentioned Black Ops 6 earlier because that is like the prime example of how games have gone. The original Black Ops came out with all of its content, and the new Black Ops is drip feeding it over the new season model, which is how Call of Duty's been doing it for a long time now. Even Halo started doing the drip feed seasonal model, releasing with a very bare bones base game, demanding full price, and then promising to add more later. And I think mentioning price is a good segue into the second point. These older games did not have nearly as much monetization. You open Call of Duty right now when the base game is already $70 and they're showing you 20, 25, sometimes even $30 bundles for these cosmetics, as well as trying to get you to buy a battle pass, which is another $10 and has a $30 version. It's insane how much money they're trying to pull out of people when it used to be you just bought the game and it worked. Call of Duty is a prime example, $60 every year. There was a season pass, but most of the player base actually stuck with the base game. Now, there are so many bundles, it would literally be thousands of real world dollars to unlock all of this content that cannot be unlocked any other way. Games used to have progression systems built into them and not added onto them later to encourage more spending from the consumer. It's a big deal. Back in the day, you wanted a camo for your gun, You either did the camo challenge, or in the case of Black Ops 1, you used COD points to buy the camo that you liked. Now, they're selling specific weapon blueprints with specific camos and specific tracer rounds and all sorts of crazy nonsense for what was originally how the map packs were priced. For $15, you got 4 multiplayer maps and a zombies map. Now $15 gets you one weapon skin, a calling card, and a double XP token. It's really, really outrageous. And all of the monetization is mostly optional in these games. They're mostly cosmetic. They do try to be predatory with it, but at the end of the day, the game still functions the same way. But it does lead to another problem where what is the prioritization behind the game's making? Is it to make money or is it to make a fun game? And that's the third point. Fun was prioritized over everything. This product needs to ship on time to make the money on day one and be fun to keep the gamer's attention. That is something that I think has completely fallen off. And by the time my kids are old enough to play whatever's current, Black Ops 9, Modern Warfare 7, Advanced Warfare 2, who knows what'll be out by the time my son can play Call of Duty, or my daughter, no clue. It will probably be very, very, very different from what I grew up playing when I consider these games to be complete and outright superior to games that have come out today. I would much rather play Halo 3 or Lego Batman or Lego Star Wars over the current games. They are just built with the wrong mindset. And of course, the industry changes. The industry has evolved. This is a multi billion dollar industry now. They realize how much money there is to be made. And there are some recent games that are absolutely amazing. Elden Ring, I'm going through that now for the first time. Elden Ring is absolutely phenomenal. But again, Elden Ring follows these 3 points. And that's why it's so successful, because Elden Ring is how games were back on the 360 and the PS3, the 7th generation era and before. Elden Ring is one game that you buy at one price that has a wealth of content to explore. There's no extra monetization, no battle passes, no loot boxes. It's shipped in a complete state, all of its content in the game, and fun, or at least the gameplay experience of Elden Ring, was prioritized. They made a game that was difficult, yes, but it was ultimately fun to play, and it kept players engaged, not because they felt obligated to grind out a battle pass with fear of missing out, or to update to the newest season and buy the new cosmetics, but because players genuinely wanted to keep playing. It was genuine dopamine and not artificial. And that's a big thing these games are not understanding nowadays. I think with all things, things come in waves. And now that we're approaching the kind of late 90s, early 2000s nostalgia binge, we had the 80s a couple years ago, back when Stranger Things came out, Thor Ragnarok, everything had synthwave to it. Now we're moving into the 90s nostalgia. We'll probably get remakes of things like The Matrix or The First Blade, and there should be a pretty big renaissance of those things. So now is a fun time to go back and look at things from the early to mid 2000s as kind of a time capsule. But it's more than that. These games from this time period are genuinely superior to what we have now. Not technically, not graphically, but I think we all understand deep down, the kid inside of us that played video games when they started, you didn't care how it looked. You didn't care which streamer was playing it. You didn't care if it had a ranked mode. You didn't care what level the battle pass was. You bought a game, you loved the game, you played it with friends, you had a great time. And I think if the entire industry can have a more childlike look at what these games actually meant, what their prioritization stood for, we could have some sort of really fun renaissance. I mean, look at Astrobot, a simple 3D platformer, won Game of the Year. That made me really happy. Did I think, other games were objectively, more cinematic? Yes. Bigger? Yes. More technically impressive? Sure. But at the end of the day, Astrobot perfectly encapsulates what gaming is. It's not movies, and it's not about competitive streaming. It's about accessible fun. Pretty sure it's not just the nostalgia goggles. I'm sure a lot of people feel this way, but I'm hoping that if the games industry can rein it in a little bit, then by the time my children are old enough to really engage with them and know what they're doing, they'll have more games like Astrobot and less movies that you just walk forward in, like most of the games Sony's been making and other things like that. I don't want an interactive movie. That's what movies are for. I want something fun that you interact with it. I'll have the kids watch Lord of the Rings if I want them to watch something truthfully cinematic. But if they want to play a fun game, I'm going to give them my old 360. I'm not giving them the new stuff. But maybe that's just me getting older. The dad in me, the boomer in me is starting to come out. But that's all I've got for today. Thank you for listening, and I hope you guys have a good one.